Welcome. The purpose of this session is to go through and introduce to you the basic interfaces available in EViews. In front of you, I've already started EViews, and you should be looking at the basic screen that comes up after you start up EViews. And I just want to talk you through what that interface is, or all the key areas, so you get a sense or get comfortable with that interface. Now, the first key area basically in the EViews screen is this area here. That's the command line, and that represents basically one of the first ways in which you can run EViews is by issuing commands on the command line. So you'll notice that when I start to demonstrate how to use EViews or take you through some of the commands, I'll be writing commands up here, one of which is the sample command, SMPL, and that's what this area is for. You just keep writing in different commands. LS, you'll see me use some of these commands as we go through. Line for graph. They're not operating now because we don't have anything to work with, but bottom line is that the commands are written in that area. And what's nice about this area is that you can actually use your up and down arrows to return back to a previous command and then just edit it or adjust it and then press enter again, and EViews will execute that command as if it's the last one that you wrote. So that's the command line. The second area of interest is actually the output area, and I just put a big zero there. Essentially, when you issue EViews commands or even use menu commands, which I'll get to, the output basically ends up being shown in a screen or a window or a dialog box, and they will end up in the lower part, essentially in this area here, which basically, and all the windows will end up being accumulated or sort of allocated in this zone. It can get a little bit confusing at times, but they also, I should point out, provide you with a window menu which allows you to cascade any windows or output windows that is coming up, tile them, arrange them, close them all in one go, or actually select them. It'll have a list of all the available open windows, and then you'll be able to select from them at ease when you work through them. Okay, now the other way of controlling EViews, and perhaps the most popular way initially, is the menu interface. And you'll see up here that essentially, as I'm sort of working my way across the menus, is that we have various menus in order to perform certain operations. Now, depending on the, perhaps here you should note that the file menu is very, very important because it enables you to create essentially new work files where you'll store your data, or new program files where you'll keep sets of EViews commands in a particular file and then run that file in order to replicate your work. So that's actually very useful. There are also commands here to save your work. So you can see these are file or database commands where you keep your time series data or your data that you're working with. Also, we have here a very important object command where it allows you to create new objects. Now, let me back up a little bit. EViews is an object-oriented database. It has many different types of objects, some of which are series objects, modeling objects, group objects, sampling objects, Kalman filter objects or state space objects. So EViews allows you to create. Now, each object has its own methods and attributes, and this is the menu in which you go to in order to create those objects. But you need to have an open work file before to do that, but I just want to point out to you the role of this menu. The other one that I find quite useful is this window object. Sometimes when you're working with EViews, you'll generate a lot of different windows, and it might get confusing as to where the final window you were working with is, or it's got hidden. You can easily find it using the window menu and just pick up previous menu or close all the current objects and get back to what you're working with. In short, EViews also has a menu interface. And one thing you'll realize as you're working through EViews is, depending on the context, the menu will change, reflecting the appropriate commands that are pertinent to the particular object that you're working with. Now, finally, I just want to point out here is that you have a capture object as well, or command capture object. It's new to EViews 9, And the role of that window is to show you, as you're working with the menus, what are the corresponding command lines that mimic that particular operation using the menu commands. So in short, you'll be working with the menus maybe to create a work file or run a regression. And then what's going to happen in the command capture area is that it will show you the corresponding EViews command line command to replicate that specific objective that you just, or specific thing that you were trying to produce using the menu options. Now that's incredibly useful because as you're working through EViews, it will effectively script your work, and then you can make a copy of that work, put it into a file, and with a little bit of editing to adjust the commands, because it's not exactly seamless. You have to make some minor adjustments typically to replicate your work. But then once you've actually fixed up the outstanding issues, you can then call up that program and then replicate your work. So that's this particular area here. We'll call that's the command capture area. And as I said, as you're working through EViews and using menu commands, the appropriate or the corresponding command lines, EViews command line instructions end up in that window and making it easier to remember what you did and to replicate your work. So those are the three key areas. Now, just let me finish up on just pointing out that down below here, we have some information as to where your files will be saved as you work, and this is indicating essentially the path is showing you the area on the hard drive where it will save all of your work. And in this case, it's fairly long because we're saving off the desktop. But if you're ever confused about where the work is being saved, just look at the path command, and that'll give you a hint as to where your work is being saved. And if you double click on that, you can actually easily browse to another folder to try and find a new area that you want to work with, or some area that you might want to start saving your files to a different area altogether. Okay, that's it for session 2, the introduction to the EViews interface. In the next session, we'll move on to learning about how to create EViews work files. So thank you for listening.